Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every episode of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Paddy.
And I'm Tricia. This week we continue our journey with the Fifth Doctor and his TARDIS crew in 4 to Doomsday. As usual, we're discussing the Doctor, companions, and villains, and giving our thoughts on the story as a whole.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on this story, so in order to join in the discussion, you can check us out at Time Team, that's TIMETEAMP, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, X as it's now called, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. But I suppose, as always, I will lead us off with the story recap.
Please do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Part 1. The TARDIS lands on a large star cruiser as it makes its way through space. Inside the time machine, Adric announces that they have landed, and the Doctor happily tells Tegan that they have landed back in Heathrow, where she can be on time for her first day as a flight attendant. However, they are all shocked when the Doctor uses the external view screen and they see they are in the control room of the star cruiser. Adric says that he put in the correct coordinates, but the Doctor says that there must have been some magnetic interference that pulled the TARDIS off course. He dons a breathing helmet and tells the others to wait inside whilst he goes to take a look around. As he explores the control room and fiddles with some pieces of equipment, he is unaware that he is being followed by a floating black orb that transmits his activity to a group of unseen figures. Inside the TARDIS, a frustrated Tegan asks for a second helmet to go outside and see what is keeping the Doctor. Adric says that they all know how distracted he can get, but assures her that since the TARDIS is a time machine, it doesn't matter how long they take to drop her back to Heathrow. Tegan asks what she should do, and Adric nonchalantly says that she should read. Tegan rejects the idea, and Adric expresses some chauvinistic thoughts on women and their intelligence, which angers both Tegan and Nyssa. Adric then questions the use of a large piece of equipment in the centre of the control room, and Nyssa sarcastically says that she thought that he knew everything. She informs him that it is a matter reducer, and then warns him that the Doctor might be in danger. Outside, the Doctor spots the drone observing him and gives it a warm smile before he retreats back inside the TARDIS. The Doctor informs the others that everything is safe and tells Adric to get extra helmets so they can go and explore the ship. He tells Nyssa that there is a lot of interesting technology on the ship that they can both look at. He warns them about the drone and tells them to follow his lead. He then gives a spare key to Tegan, who reluctantly takes it due to being frustrated at her potential firing. Outside, the Doctor shows the others the equipment and he and Nyssa explain what everything does. Nyssa recognizes a piece of inoperative equipment as being reminiscent of something that was used on Traken, and the Doctor tells her to see if she can get it working again. He then addresses the drone, telling it that he means no harm. He requests to speak with whoever is in charge, and Tegan notices a door opening. The Doctor and Tegan make their way towards it, and the Doctor tells Adric to stay with Nyssa, which he reluctantly does so. Adric angrily tells the drone to leave them alone, and Nyssa tells him to calm down and help her with her tinkering. In the other control room, the mysterious figures comment on the fact that the scans show the TARDIS having originated on Earth, and they dare mistake the Doctor and the others as Earthlings. They show amazement at the intelligence they display, and one of them worries if their technical aptitude exceeds their own. Just then, the Doctor and Tegan arrive in the control room, and the mysterious figures are revealed to be a trio of robed, green-skinned aliens. The leader introduces himself as Monarch, and introduces his female counterpart as Enlightenment, and his male counterpart as Persuasion. The Doctor introduces himself and identifies himself and the others via their species origin. Monarch does the same, identifying his people as the Urbanka, which the Doctor comments is a long way away from where they currently are. Monarch changes the life support systems, allowing the Doctor and Tegan to remove their helmets, and he also summons refreshments while they talk. The Urbanka question them about current Earth trends and fashions, saying that they had not been to Earth for nearly 2,500 years. Back in the primary control room, Adric goes into the TARDIS to get some equipment. While he is gone, a man in Grecian-style clothing appears and confronts Nyssa. Adric calls out to her from inside the TARDIS, and when he gets no response, he goes outside to find her missing. He demands that the drone tell him where she is, and in response, a nearby door opens and Adric goes through it. Back in the other room, Monarch asks how the Doctor arrived on board, and he explains how the magnetic interference being put out from the Urbanka ship interfered with the TARDIS's Artron energy field. Suddenly Adric appears, and Monarch tests his knowledge of maths by asking him a theory of relativity. Adric tries to tell the Doctor about Nyssa, but he flashes him a warning stare, and Adric answers the Monarch's question. Tegan, who had been sketching out some current examples of the style being worn back in her own time, presents it to Enlightenment, and Monarch summons a drone to take the Doctor and the others to their refreshments. After they go, Monarch commends Enlightenment on her ruse, and says he will go take a closer look at the TARDIS. The Doctor and the others are brought to a room where they find Nyssa waiting for them, as well as another drone. Nissa tells him about the man she met, but he suddenly appears himself, carrying a tray of refreshments. He says his name is Bygone, and that he comes from the Greek city-state of Athens. They all sit down to eat, and the doctor asks Bygone how he got on the ship. However, they are interrupted by the arrival of an Australian Aborigine. He greets him in his native tongue, and Tegan responds in it, translating for the doctor and the others. She says that the Aborigine's name is Kurkuchi, who says that they are currently on a walkabout to the time of dreaming, a metaphor for going to heaven. Just then, a Mesoamerican woman in regal attire enters, and Bygone introduces her as Princess Villagra of the Mayan people, who has taken a vow of silence until she is reunited with them. Another man enters, a Mandarin Chinese, who greets them and introduces himself as Lin Futu. The doctor asks how they all happen to be on the ship, but Bygone receives a secret command from Monarch, who has returned to his control room after failing to break into the TARDIS. Just then, a man and woman appear wearing clothes exactly like the ones Tegan sketched out earlier. They say that they will be arriving on Earth in 4 days and reveal that they are enlightenment and persuasion. Part 2. Adric asks how they changed their form, and Enlightenment says that their technology is advanced enough to facilitate the change. Persuasion says that the reason they have changed is because the last time they visited Earth, the Earthlings were frightened of them because of their appearance. The Doctor expresses an interest in reading any history books of the Urbanka, and Enlightenment says that she will help him. In his control room, Monarch observes the Doctor's wariness and orders his computer to retrieve any files on him, Gallifrey, or Artron Energy. The Doctor asks why the Urbanka are travelling to Earth, and Enlightenment and Persuasion tell him that their home planet was destroyed 1,000 years ago after their sun collapsed and formed a black hole. The Doctor and the others are amazed when they are told that the ship they are on is actually carrying the remaining 3 billion members of the Urbanka species. Enlightenment, under orders from Monarch, orders Bygone to take the travellers to their new accommodations, which Bygone says were his when he was brought on the ship over 100 generations ago. Once they are alone, Tegan demands that they leave, but the Doctor says that there is more going on than meets the eye, and uses his hat to cover the floating monitor drone before using a sonic pen to distort its audio so Monarch can't hear them. In his control room, with the recently returned Enlightenment and Persuasion, Monarch expresses admiration for the Doctor's intelligence and suggests he could be a useful ally. The others disagree, saying that his anarchic nature is opposed to their own ideals. Persuasion also highlights the change in Bygone's attitude since the Doctor and the others came on board, and Enlightenment agrees, saying that he is exhibiting something akin to having a soul. Monarch rebukes her for her blasphemy and says that she is not to mention it again. Back in their quarters, the Doctor and the others are discussing how the ship could possibly hold 3 billion people. Tegan and Adric think it's impossible, but the Doctor and Nyssa think that there is a scientific explanation to the situation. Nyssa explains about her knowledge of cybernetics and points out the new versions of Enlightenment and Persuasion that resemble Tegan's sketch. The Doctor then chimes in saying that he has worked out the math, and based on the presence of the 4 Earthlings, the Urbanka have been to Earth over 4 times over the last 12,000 years, and this time they are coming for good. He then suggests that they explore the ship to discover what the Urbanka want. He tells everyone to put on their helmets before they exit the room. Unbeknownst to them, this is anticipated by Monarch, who orders that a distraction be put in place to keep the Doctor occupied and that Nyssa and Adric be separated from him so they can tell Monarch all they know about the Doctor. This works, and the Doctor tells Tegan not to worry as they make their way through the ship, with Nyssa and Adric going down a different route. The Doctor and Tegan enter a large gathering hall where they see representatives of the 4 different cultures watching as a group of Mayan women perform a dance. They are greeted by Persuasion, who invites them to sit down and watch the exchange of cultural traditions. The Doctor asks if there will be a demonstration from the Urbanka, but Persuasion replies that such primitive things are beneath them. In his control room, Monarch berates Bygone for his behaviour and orders him not to tell the Doctor anything of his mission until the time is right. Bygone points out that the Doctor will not aid Monarch in his mission to find something he calls the ultimate, as it does not exist. Monarch berates him for blasphemy and demands that he follow his instructions. Elsewhere, Nyssa and Adric enter a garden lab tended by a group of Aborigines. Adric tries to communicate with them, but they ignore him, and so he and Nyssa continue to explore. They are lured into a room that has low oxygen levels, forcing them to don their helmets. They are surprised to see a group of Greek men working on machines, seemingly oblivious to the lack of oxygen. Adric again tries to get their attention, and he notices that their skin is ice cold. Nyssa notices a small disc on each of their hands, and when she tries to examine it, Monarch, who has been watching their progress, sends a signal to the man to brush her aside. Confused, Adric and Nyssa continue to explore. Back in the Grand Hall, the Mayan women finish their dance and they are replaced by 2 groups of dragon dancers. Tegan says that they should go and look for the others as they could be in danger, but the Doctor says that they are safe. Tegan calls him mad, and the doctor says that she should take his advice and look as if they are enjoying themselves to prevent persuasion from becoming suspicious. Bygone enters once the dance is finished and summons a pair of hoplite soldiers to give a demonstration of their combat skills. He goes to the doctor and tells him to pretend that he's explained the rules of the fight before saying that he must speak to him in private. The doctor tells him to meet him in their room, and he provides a distraction so that Bygone can slip away unnoticed. A short while later, the combat ends with one of the hoplites being stabbed through the chest. The body is dragged away, and Kikuchi then summons a group of his people to perform a ceremonial dance. The doctor and Tegan slip away and make their way back to their quarters, where they find Bygone waiting. Tegan begins to cry after having watched the fight, but Bygone says that it isn't what it seems. Elsewhere, Nissa and Adric enter another lab, being overseen by a group of Chinese technicians. They suddenly see both hoplites enter and watch as the one who was stabbed through the chest make his way onto a bench. They then watch as a dome is put over him, which emits a bright light. The dome is then removed and they see the wound completely healed. Monarch then orders them to be brought to him, and the hoplites apprehend them. Back in their quarters, Bygone tells the Doctor and Tegan that the Urbanka first came to Earth 35,000 years ago, and that they abducted Kikuchi. He says that Monarch has managed to double the speed of the ship with each successive trip, lessening the amount of time it will take to travel between the two planets. The Doctor wonders how anyone could live that long, and Bygone reveals that none of the humans they saw are actually alive. He then peels away his chest and opens his face to reveal that he is a robot. Part 3. Bygone pulls a computer chip out of his chest and says that this is where his personality and memories are stored. The Doctor is amazed by the technology used to create Bygone and tries to make Tegan appreciate it, but she refuses. The Doctor says that must be how the rest of the Urbanka are being stored, but Bygone says that the representatives of the human cultures are actually slave robots. Bygone says that Monarch intends to conquer Earth so that he can access its minerals like silicon and carbon to help craft the materials needed to make more robots. He says that Monarch will pretend to help Earth by offering them new technologies, and then he will put his plans into action. He tells the Doctor and Tegan that Monarch wants to use them to help assure humanity of his well-meaning, but Tegan refuses to be used as a pawn. However, Bygone says that Monarch has a deadly toxin on board, and that he will use it on humanity if they do not help him. Meanwhile, in his control room, Monarch tells Nissa and Adric that he means them no harm. He tells them his and the others' true nature, but grows irritated when Nissa says that they are androids. Nissa says that the Earth robots are little more than slaves, but Monarch and Enlightenment say that such terms are reminiscent of the flesh time, which they explain was when their bodies were susceptible to disease and death. Monarch says that he has defeated these things by converting the Urbanka to their current synthetic forms. Adric, sensing Monarch's growing anger, says that they are amazed by what he has accomplished. Monarch, happy to hear this, says that they can help him in his crusade to give Earth the same salvation he gave the Urbanka. Adric expresses admiration for this, especially when Monarch highlights humanity's violent and self-destructive nature, but Nissa refuses the idea. Adric says that war and famine will be eradicated with the help of the Urbanka, but she says that it will only lead to tyranny. Enlightenment berates her for her scientific arrogance, but Monarch says that she will come around. Nissa again refuses, saying that the Monarch is no better than the Master, but Adric says that she is wrong. Monarch asks about the Master, and Adric proceeds to tell him. Back in the Doctor's quarters, Bygone says that Monarch was the real reason that the Urbanka's home planet was destroyed. He says that Monarch pillaged its resources, which caused pollution that destroyed the atmosphere and left the planet ravaged by radiation. The Doctor asks what Monarch's true aim is, and Bygone says that Monarch wants to unlock the secrets of faster-than-light travel, so he can travel back in time and prove his belief that he's actually the universe's creator. The Doctor asks Bygone why he hasn't turned on Monarch, and Bygone says that there is a failsafe mechanism in his body that is rigged to go off at any sign of resistance. The Doctor says that he has no other choice but to go along with Monarch's plan. Bygone says that it is too dangerous and that they will eventually end up like Bygone and the others. Tegan becomes hysterical at this and ignores the Doctor's pleas to listen to him. The Doctor asks Bygone to show him where the personality chips are kept. Tegan again says that they need to leave, but the Doctor tells her to stop thinking about herself, saying that they need to save the rest of humanity, but they cannot warn them directly as they will not be believed. He tells her to stay in the room as she will be safer there and goes with Bygone. At that moment, Adric tells Monarch about the Time Lords, the Doctor, and the TARDIS, but Nissa tells him to shut up. Monarch tells Adric to continue, and once he is done, he asks Adric to go to the Doctor and ask him to give Monarch a tour of the TARDIS. However, he keeps Nissa with him and says that he has other plans for her. He has enlightenment hypnotized her so that she can be prepared to have her memory transferred to a robot before her body is disposed of. They then get an alert that a security drone has gone offline, and Monarch angrily demands that the Doctor be found. They track his movements by monitoring the security drones that he renders inoperable. The Doctor and Bygone then go into the room with the Greek robots, who Bygone says are working on calculations to create faster-than-light travel, and says that in 1,000 years, Monarch will have achieved it. Adric returns to the guest quarters and asks Tegan where the Doctor is. He tells her about Monarch's magnanimous nature, but then gets angry when she ignores him and says that she is going to the TARDIS in order to warn Earth. He says that she can't fly it, nor can she get into it, but she produces the spare key the Doctor gave her and says that he can either help her or get out of her way. They briefly struggle, and Tegan throws Adric to the floor as she runs past him, unaware that he hits his head on a bench as he fell, knocking him out. She manages to get inside the TARDIS, unaware that she is being watched by Monarch and the others. They turn their attention back to tracking the Doctor, who's been guided by Bygone through the gardens, which the Doctor notices houses several containers holding frogs. Bygone says that they are the source of the poison that Monarch intends to use. They then make their way to the lab area, overseen by Lin Futu and his people. Bygone tells Lin Futu that Monarch gave him instructions to show the Doctor around, but he eavesdrops on them and then leaves when he hears Bygone telling the Doctor where the personality chips are stored. Bygone says that he was once imprisoned in the storage unit after attempting to lead a revolt. He then tells how the transfer process works and spots Nyssa in the transfer pod. They put her out of it, and after she comes to, she tells him about Adric being sent to find him and Monarch's interest in the TARDIS. The Doctor asks Bygone if the cultural leaders will join them in an uprising, but Bygone says that they have been corrupted with promises of control over their people when they return to Earth. The Doctor asks if they could use the slave robots, and Bygone says they may be able to, but they would have to reprogram their circuitry. Nyssa asks the Doctor to borrow his sonic screwdriver and pencil, as she wants to test the theory. Adric then arrives and tells the Doctor about Tegan, but before he can react, Persuasion arrives with a pair of hoplites and orders them and the Mandarin robots to apprehend the Doctor and the others. Meanwhile, a tearful Tegan manages to get the TARDIS working and it dematerializes, much to Monarch's delight, as it means he doesn't need the Doctor anymore. At that moment, Persuasion orders Bygone to be taken away to be decircuited, and he orders the Doctor to be killed. Adric protests as the hoplite prepares to behead the Doctor. Part 4. Nyssa rushes forward and touches the sonic screwdriver and pen against the hoplite's control disk, immobilizing it. She does the same to the one holding Adric, and then he rushes forward, begging Persuasion to spare the Doctor's life. In his control room, Monarch and Enlightenment commend Adric's bravery and Nyssa's intelligence. Adric says that if they hurt the Doctor, then he will not join them in their crusade. Monarch agrees and orders them to be brought to him and that the sonic screwdriver be confiscated. Persuasion then forces them to the control room at gunpoint. En route, they see that the TARDIS has materialized just outside the cruiser. Once in the control room, Monarch berates the Doctor for his behaviour whilst being a guest, but the Doctor counters this by saying that hosts aren't meant to kill their guests. Monarch says that he is only defending himself against the Doctor's plotting, but he promises not to harm him or the others so long as he behaves. He sends Nyssa back to Lin Futu and then sends the Doctor and Adric back to the gathering hall to watch more entertainment. However, the Doctor leads Adric back to the guest quarters and proclaims that he was mistaken about Monarch, but proceeds to give him backhanded compliments, loud and clear enough for the repaired security drones to pick them up. Adric is delighted at this and says that was what he was trying to say all along. The Doctor says that he will seek an audience with Monarch, but first suggests going to the gathering hall to watch the entertainment. When they arrive, they see Bygone watching an Aboriginal dance, and they go take their own seats in the upper gallery, all the while watched by Persuasion. As they make their way to their seats, the Doctor calls Adric a naive idiot and says that Monarch is one of the biggest threats to the universe. Adric is shocked by this and tells the Doctor that he is wrong, but the Doctor tells him of Monarch's true objective to go back in time and prove his belief of being the universal creator. Adric still doubts him, even when the Doctor mentions the poison that Monarch has on board. Adric points out that Monarch could have let the Doctor die, but the Doctor replies that Monarch can't risk alienating Adric due to his need to have him lull humanity into a false sense of security. Adric asks how he intends to stop Monarch, but the Doctor says that he won't tell him unless he can be sure he fully trusts him. Adric agrees, and the Doctor then makes a show of being tired before leading Adric back to their quarters. The Doctor leads Adric to the storage lab, saying that they will need to take down Monarch. Inside, he is confronted by Lin Futu, but the Doctor begs him to hear him out. He tells him that Monarch has no intention of holding up his end of the bargain, pointing out that he will have no need of him once he controls all of humanity. Lin Fuju agrees to help restore Bygone, and the Doctor tells him to send out his dragon dancers to cause a distraction. The Doctor and Adric then return to the gathering hall and take the now docile Bygone with them inside one of the dragon costumes, which they use as cover to get him back to the lab. Lin Fuju restores Bygone, whilst the Doctor wakes up Nissa. Bygone says that he will win over Villagra and Korkuchi over to their side, and the Doctor says that he and Adric will need to get on board the TARDIS. Lin Futu gives Adric a spacesuit, as the Doctor says that he can survive for a limited time without their protection, and so they can exit one of the exterior hatches in order to float to the TARDIS. The Doctor asks if they will be able to take control of the other robots, and Bygone says that there is a failsafe that they can exploit, where if all the cultural groups are acting in proximity of each other at the same time, then their normal command subroutines are halted. This works, as Monarch is shocked when he sees them all in the gathering hall performing their various cultural performances, and he orders Nissa to be killed, unaware that the Doctor has already freed her. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Adric go to one of the external hatches, and the Doctor tethers himself to the doorway before launching himself into space. Suddenly, Persuasion appears and aims a gun at Adric, but misses, and Adric manages to disarm him. However, when he uses the gun against Persuasion, he finds that the blasts go right through him, and Persuasion starts to strangle him. The Doctor pulls himself back in and manages to rip Persuasion's personality chip out of his body, rendering him immobile. The Doctor then throws it into space before retrieving his sonic screwdriver from Persuasion and launching himself back into space. However, just before he reaches the TARDIS, the rope runs out and he looks back to see Enlightenment appear and knock out Adric before untying the rope. The Doctor drifts away as he watches Adric get up and struggle with Enlightenment. Adric manages to remove her personality chip and also flings it into space before turning to help the Doctor, but seeing the rope was already adrift. With little time left, the Doctor takes a cricket ball from his pocket and throws it against the side of the cruiser, using its returning momentum to propel him to the TARDIS. He gets inside the TARDIS, finding a frustrated Tegan delighted to see him. He then materializes the TARDIS inside the gathering hall and tells Tegan to bring a couple of their breathing helmets with her as they exit. They are confronted by a furious Monarch, but the Doctor tells Tegan to run and they meet up with the others at the storage lab. He tells everyone to put on their helmets as Monarch has lowered the oxygen level. He goes into a trance to preserve his own oxygen, whilst Lin Futu quickly repairs another helmet for him. Once that is fixed, the Doctor tells Bygone to change the course of the ship back to Urbanka, and he then goes to retrieve the poison from the containment area. The Doctor then faces the security drone and tells Monarch that he is better off returning home, and then leads the others back to the TARDIS. They are there confronted by Monarch, but before he can raise his weapon against them, the Doctor hurls the container of poison at him, which shatters all over him and shrivels Monarch's organic components, shrinking him down. The Doctor then traps him in one of the breathing helmets, telling the others that Monarch is still mostly organic, and that was why the Garden Lab existed on a ship full of robots. Tegan asks if they can go home, and the Doctor asks Bygone and the others if they will join him, but Bygone says they've decided to try colonizing a new world for themselves. On the TARDIS, the Doctor sets course for Heathrow, but suddenly Nissa calls out for him as she collapses to the floor. End of the story. So, just when we thought crisis was averted, apparently we're left on a cliffhanger for the first time in ages. So, in order to tide us over for the time being, we'll take a quick detour to the trivia spot. So, Trish, what have you got for us this week?
Cool. So the air date for Doomsday is the 18th to 26th of January 1982. The writer of the story is Terence Dudley. We previously spoke about Terence in his capacity as director for the story Meglos, and then again for his writing of the K9 and Company pilot A Girl's Best Friend. This is his first of 3 Doctor Who writing credits. We'll see his work again in Black Orchid and The King Siemens. The director for the story is John Black. We also spoke about John Black when we discussed K9 and Company, as he directed that too, and he also directed Keeper of Traken. This is his final Doctor Who credit. So I mentioned last week that last week's story, though the first of the season, wasn't actually the first film. That will be this story, for the Doomsday. So Peter Davison has often said that his first stories were recorded out of sequence, that Castrovalva might include a more confident performance on his part. There's also a more practical reason. A little over a month before it was due to go in front of cameras, Project Zeta Sigma, which was at the time going to be the first story, was shelved by John Nathan Turner. And since there wasn't time to get a whole new story ready, the production order had to be revised. The out of order recording had nothing to do with any lack of confidence in Davis. Castrovalvo simply wasn't written by the time the Fifth Doctor needed to make his debut in front of the cameras. Now it is said on like Blu-rays and stuff like that that there was also the component of wanting to have the group feeling more connected. But if there was nothing for them to film, then that is a understandable reason as well.
Mm.
As well as being the first Fifth Doctor story filmed, this is also the last story to be released on VHS, which is obviously massively outdated now, but good to know for
Mm-hmm.
anyone who collected VHS back in the day. The working title for the story was Day of Wrath, which I think makes just as much sense as For to Doomsday, to be honest. Um, this is the first Doctor Who story since, well, it says here since the Monster of Peladon, not to feature the Fourth Doctor in any capacity. I think they may be meant since Planet of the Spiders.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know who filled in that line on the TARDIS wiki, but yeah, no, since Planet of the
Yeah.
Spiders, to not feature the Fourth Doctor in any capacity. It's the first Doctor Who televised story since Meglos not to be part of a wider story arc either. You mentioned this as fainting spell,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is kind of a throwback to the style of serial transition that we had during the first Doctor era.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily meant to be a continuation in terms of like the trilogy that we had for the Master and stuff like that. It's just a carryover into the next story. And the reason why she collapsed will be revealed next week.
Mm-hmm.
Philip Locke, who played Bygone, also provided the voice of Control in parts 1 and 2, but was uncredited on screen. Part 1 establishes the date of Logopolis and the opening scenes of Castrovalva by revealing that the flight Tegan was trying to catch in Logopolis was Flight A778 at 17:30 on the 20th of February 1981, which retroactively set Logopolis to be on the same date it was broadcast. Peter Davison probably didn't enjoy this serial because he was new and he felt he didn't really know what he was doing. We can talk later on when we talk about the Doctor if we agree with that assessment. Matthew Waterhouse felt Adam's reason for citing the villain made no sense, and he resented it, his character being made to have bad motives and beliefs for no reason other than for the other characters to tell them that they were bad. Eh. Stafford Johns was disappointed with how unrecognizable he was as Monarch in the finished program, and this was after he requested latex rather than the traditional mask he was supposed to wear. The mask he was supposed to wear was much like those worn by his co-stars playing Persuasion and Enlightenment. He
Mm-hmm.
refused, fearing that the mask would hamper his performance. As a compromise, the makeup department created a thin latex mask each day for him to wear. It was laborious to apply and could only be used once since it was destroyed when it was removed, but allayed his concerns about the mask. He couldn't drink while on set because he couldn't get out of the costume to go to the lavatory. It was a lot of work for one performance.
Mm-hmm.
The Aboriginal character's dialogue, and Tegan's when she demonstrates she can speak his language, was originally scripted as plausible sounding gibberish. Janet Fielding, who was Australian, felt this was insulting and requested that
Mm-hmm.
the writer consult the BBC's language department to rewrite the dialogue in an actual Aboriginal language. The one they settled on was Tiwi, Tiwi. I'm not sure how that's pronounced.
Good girl, Janet.
Yeah, very much so. We've spoken about how Matthew Waterhouse has had issues with cast members before, not getting along very well with them, having rocky starts, etc. Unfortunately, that did extend to his relationship with Peter Davison. He got off to a rocky start when he pointed out mistakes that Peter was making and told him that he would never be as good as Tom. That, Matthew, is overstepping more
Yeah.
than a little bit.
Also, telling him that you'll never be as good as the guy that treats you like shit for your entire working relationship with him. Bit of a weird flex.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about our cast. So, as the
Yeah.
Monarch, as I said, we have Stafford Johns. He's the only Doctor Who acting credit for Stafford. His non-Who credits include The Lady Killers, Count of Monte Cristo, A Night to Remember, Z-Cars, Jackanory, Softly Softly, and Softly Softly Task Force. Stafford passed away in 2002. As Persuasion, we have Paul Shelley. This is his only on-screen Doctor Who credit, though he did do a number of voices for Big Finish. His non-Who credits include Blake Seven, Macbeth, Revelations, and Breakaway. As Enlightenment, we have Annie Lambert. This is also her only Doctor Who acting credit. Her non-Who credits include Private Affairs, Midsummer Murders, Space 1999, and Howard's Way. As Bygone, we have Philip Locke, only Doctor Who acting credit once more for Philip. In his non-Who credits include Codename Icarus, The Box of Delights, and James Bond Thunderwall.
And
Linfutu,
also the Porridge movie.
cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Linfutu was played by Bert Wow. Oh, I've butchered
I
his last name.
I I think it's Quack. I think it's Bert Quack.
Okay, fuck. Again, only on-screen Doctor Who credit, though he also did some work for Big Finish. His non-Who credits include Last of the Summer Wind, James Bond Goldfinger, and then a rush of Pink Panther films: The Return of the Pink Panther Strikes Again, Revenge of the Pink Panther, Trail of the Pink Panther, Curse of the Pink Panther, and Son of the Pink Panther. Lynn passed
He
away in
was
2000, or Bert passed away in 2016, rather.
Yeah, he was. I think I can't remember the name. I think it was Kato, but he was basically Inspector Clouseau's sidekick, whose whole gimmick was that he would randomly attack him in his own house and leading to just like loads of slapstick fights. But he was also like his basically his sidekick throughout the entire film series.
Mm. Okay, I'm gonna get the next name horribly wrong as well. Kirkutsi?
Kikuchi.
Kirkutsi, thank you. Is
Hmm.
played by Ilario Bisi Pedro. Is the only Doctor Who acting credit. Non-Who credits include Children of Men, Kinky Boots, The Bill, and Rottweiler. Ilario passed away in 2013. And lastly, as Villagra, we have Nadia Hammond. It is her only Doctor Who acting credit, and actually her only other known acting credit was in a 1982 episode of Play for Today. And that brings us to the end of our cast.
Thank you for that lovely trivia, as
You're
always.
welcome.
It's always kind of cool as well, like when you this is the one thing I like about the trivia section, other than the fact that we get the interesting tidbits, is that if you like an actor's performance, you do get a recommended list of stuff for to check them out in. So, like, we talked
Mm,
before about Philip Maddock, we talked about Bernard Kay. Here we have Bert Kwok, who I actually kind of like from like Last of Summer Wine and his other like appearances in different things. So I always like, yeah, like I saw one there, Children of Men, which is a fantastic film. And it also had like one of the most audible collective group gasps when a guy gets hit in the head with a typewriter. Like it was the most unique watching experience I've ever had, where the entire room just went ooh at the same time. But we now come on to the main section of the podcast. Like, I keep coming up with a brand new term for this fucking part. It's the character discussion, where myself and Trish, we take a look at the main characters from the story. So be the Doctor, the companions, who would be Adric, Tegan, and Nissa. Prominent characters is mostly Bygone, I feel.
yeah, I would agree.
And then we have the villains of mainly Monarch, but Persuasion and Enlightenment are there as well for a bit of discussion, I think.
Mm. So,
Cool.
as you did socials, that means you go first. So,
Yes.
starting off with the Doctor, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, despite his misgivings, I think Peter did a really good performance here. Like, I thought that he just felt so natural in the role, you know? And especially for this is if this is the first thing that he shot, it's I don't see any case of jitters, or I don't see anything. It almost feels like he's been doing this for a while. Um, like, we get to see a lot of good facets from him here. I think there's his intelligence, his ingenuity, especially when dealing with the security drones. Like there's like this disarming charm about him as he makes his way around. And I think he does a really good job, and we talked about it last week, is displaying the age wisdom beyond his youthful appearance. Um, I loved his interaction mostly with Nissa. Like, I think his best interactions are with Bygone and Nissa in this story. Like, in terms of the companions, like himself and Nissa are like science Batman and Robin. Like,
Mm,
it's just so nice to see it. Like when he goes out of the TARDIS at the start, he takes a look around and he comes back and he singles her out to say like there's a lot of interesting technology out there for us to take a look at, young lady, or for you to take at, you young lady. Like he doesn't do that for Adric and he doesn't do it for Tegan. It's like it's like Nissa is his protege at this stage, you know.
Mm,
Um, I like these discussions with Bygone because I think it lended itself to a very good performance from. Forgive me now, I have to take a look at his name, but from Philip, that played Bygone. I think it lended itself to a very
mm.
good, um, compassionate performance from him. I thought they worked really well off each other. So yeah, I liked him. I liked him for this one.
Okay, very good. Um,
Maybe you not so much.
Not really. I'm not gonna
Oh,
lie.
okay,
I I got the feeling watching it that Peter was uncomfortable, and
okay,
and bear in mind, I watched it before I watched the first episode before I did the notes,
yeah.
and I did get the sense that he was a bit uncomfortable in the role, unsure of himself, which is fine. Like it's not a big thing. Um, but in terms of the Doctor himself, I found it that he was interesting and not necessarily in a good way. What I mean
Oh,
by that is the way he reacted to the other Earthlings of the ship was very odd and not like the Doctor we've seen before. So there's a big question on why he didn't understand the Aboriginal language and why no one could understand the Aboriginal language. Because no offense to um, Aboriginal people, but they're not older than Gallifreyan history. Do you know what I mean? There's no reason
mm.
why the TARDIS shouldn't be able to do the language. Um,
Yeah, no, that's an inconsistency that comes up, I think, quite a bit. That the TARDIS Universal Translator somehow manages to just. I think that was probably done so that Tegan would get a bit of a shine in the story.
Maybe, but it just doesn't make sense. But also, what I didn't
Yeah.
particularly like in that scene is that he there's a little bit of a racist play um on Lidfutu's name, and he somehow doesn't know how to address Villagra, which is not something like if that was Doc John or Tom or anyone else, you would expect him to recognize the custom, know how to interact, even if he couldn't speak the language, know how to
Mm.
interact and know how to greet them. And it just came across like I mean like his thing his slightly like again I don't know if it was racist or whatever comment to Linfutu on his name, and I'm kind of like, okay, why are you doing that? It's very weird. Um,
What was the racial component there?
I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but basically he made a joke at Linfutu's name.
Oh
Or
yes,
when
yes.
Linfutu introduced himself, he made a joke.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll actually because I'm just curious there now, so I'll actually take a look at it. Um, he goes, "I'm Lin Fushu. Well, I'd never have guessed it. You look in the best of health to me." I don't get the joke.
yeah, neither do I. Was what I thought. I wondered. I was like, was I missing something? Was it meant to be? Is it a slightly racist thing or whatever? Um, I was like random.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and like why I do agree with you. Like his dynamic with Bygone is very good. His dynamic with Nissa is very good. His dynamics with Adric and Tegan are kind of horrific. Like particularly with Tegan. Like I we'll get to her in a minute, but like he's so not considerate of her. Like when you compare his dynamics with Adric and Tegan this week compared to his dynamics with them last week. When last
Mm.
week he was in the middle of a regeneration, he was at the surface, whatever. He just seems to find Tegan annoying, and doesn't seem to give her any measure of trust or whatever, bar giving her the keys to TARDIS. And Adric, I think the way he reacted to Adric, you know, siding with the monarch and stuff, I don't think I don't know. I just didn't like him calling him an idiot and all that kind of stuff. It was just like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you being like this? Do you know?
Mm.
So personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of him in this story. I did try to give it a bit of leeway, knowing it was Peter's first. I just think the way the Doctor was written in the story was just a bit shit. Um,
You know, like I agree. All right, that when it comes to the Adric and Tegan components, like I have comments about Tegan, but at the same time, it's like I would have thought that he could have handled her in a better way. And with Adric's whole thing is, yeah, like calling like calling him naive, yeah, it's perfectly fine. The idiot component of it though is a bit like I do like the only I think the last time the Doctor like called one of his companions something like idiotic or was Harry when he called him an imbecile.
yeah, like calling Adric an idiot, it had that ringing of "shut up, Wesley," do you know?
Yeah.
Um, which was uncalled for in that story of Star Trek. I don't think it's uncalled for here, and
Hmm.
particularly when you consider the fact that like Adric looks up to the Doctor in a big way. He clearly tries to model himself after him. He tries to behave like him. Not always for the betterment, but he tries. And so to have
Mm.
the Doctor just call him an idiot, as opposed to being like, okay, Edric, explain to me what was said to you, do you know?
Hmm.
And like trying to guide him through it. Um, I don't know, it struck me wrong and it just felt really awkward.
Yeah, no, I can see that component to it.
Hmm.
I think he's probably at his best with Nissa and Bygone, but not so much with Adric and Tegan.
Yeah, and even then with Nissa and Bygone, like I said, I think it was a little bit of me knowing this is his first story, but I did find Peter seemed a bit clunky at times or unsure of his performance at times. Um, Not that that takes from the overall story, but just something that I did notice when I was watching that he didn't seem as in the zone this week as he was last week.
Okay, yeah, I think it's like I think it's actually kind of cool that we've had like such varying takes on them this time around. Because normally, like when like
Hmm.
we're in kind of sync, it's like we're just kind of saying, yeah, pretty much what you said. But like here, we're not entirely on the same page, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. But then
Um,
we have our companions.
yeah. So
So
do you want to go from worst to best?
I don't know. You get to go first. So you pick.
Yeah. So yeah, like we'll start off. I think we'll go Adric, Tegan, and Nissa.
Hmm.
Okay, so Adric, someone took a hard left turn into Assholeville here. Like it's like the sexism and just picking on Tegan. Like, where the fuck does that come from? Like, just saying that they're not as intelligent and like, oh, like, what was he said? Like to like, oh, that Nissa was just a girl and not a woman or something like that. And it's just like, like seriously, where the fuck is it all coming from? Because yeah, they were never like this to Nissa before, and a part of me is like the whole kind of firstborn child syndrome where he's just now picking on people and being condescending because he has them to compete with him for the Doctor's attention. Um, so yeah, like like that really put me on like an entire sour note for the entire story here with Adric because he just does seem to bitch and moan for the entire story. Um, and then as well, like it's the one thing that is kind of I would have thought that given his experiences like recently, especially the one he had on the planet with stated with the vampires, like where
Hmm.
they don't trust like seemingly altruistic people until you've taken a complete look around. Like I would have thought like he'd be a bit more savvy to that. But here it's he kind of drinks the Kool-Aid a small bit. And the other thing then as well, like no, this isn't necessarily anything to do with Adric, but just on your comment there about how he was giving Peter notes and like commenting on his
Mm,
performance, I think it's a bit rich that Matthew is giving Peter like direction or corrections when his line delivery is very questionable at times here, because
mm,
it's like it's like some of his line delivery is like, oh Nissa, I'm just playing it. Like it's almost like it's coming across as like he's just playing along with Monarch, but then it's like, oh no, he actually does believe him. He's fully on board with this plan. So that line delivery is just very confusing.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm not a fan of Adric in this story.
I would agree. I think this is probably the first story that truly had me understanding why people don't like Adric. Because like he's had awkward moments in previous stories, but like here it's just like the chauvinistic asshole. What the fuck? Also, the idiotic chauvinistic asshole. Do you know? So like he thinks that because he's good at maths, that he is the superior intelligence,
Mm,
after the Doctor. But then when they leave the TARDIS, Nissa knows how everything works, knows what everything is, and he's just that kid who was caught lying about being smart.
yeah.
Do you know, where she's like, "Oh, you know what this is?" He's like, "Yeah, of course I do. It's uh, it's the it's the, of course I do. Of course I do. Like, do you know what I mean?" And even when she sends him off to do things, like he gets so like put out by everything. It's just a
Mm,
bit ridiculous. And to your point, I don't know where it came from because him and Nessa were really pally before, and now
hmm.
suddenly they're not. His treatment of
Yeah.
Tegan is just horrendous. Like,
Mm,
Tegan, and maybe it's because he spent most of last week's story um not actually interacting with Tegan in reality, because obviously he was doing his mental projections, whether intentional or non, to Nissa, not to Tegan. But
mm,
like Tegan really held her own last week, Adric. You know, she did, put best foot forward, was fucking doing everything she could while you were fucking tied up in a web. Like, cop on now, like, do you know what I mean? The
yeah.
only thing I can think of is that our writer for this story, who's Terence Dudley, just didn't have a clue how to write a super intelligent teenager. Like I think back to Brendan in
Mm,
K9 and Company, who is also quite intelligent for his age, not as super intelligent as Adric, but he's quite
mm.
intelligent for his age. And Brendan actually wasn't written too badly. So
No.
I don't know what it is about this that like he's presented with the character of Adric and just makes him a chauvinistic, idiotic asshole who also doesn't know how to shut his mouth. Like
Mm,
he's there telling the monarch fucking everything. Like literally everything. Like, dude, shut up. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is not your first rodeo. You know you should be keeping some things close to the chest. Like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. So I found him to be a massive pain in the ass, and I took a small amount of pleasure in the fact that he gets shot with that ray multiple times directly in the face. It doesn't do anything clearly other than disorientate him a bit, but he
yeah.
gets shot in the face multiple times. And in this particular story, I felt he deserved it.
Yeah. No, it's just like because I remember before we before we started Adric's tenure on the show, I was like, yeah, I remember not liking Adric a whole lot. And then like when we did the first three stories and we did Legopolis, and I was like, wait, actually no, it's pretty good. And then like I watched this, I'm like, ah yeah, now I remember. Oh god. So let's move on to the target of his ire. So Tegan. And I'm a bit of a mixed bag on Tegan here. And
Mm,
I don't necessarily think that it's down to Janet's performance. I think it's probably down to the writing of Tegan herself.
mm,
because I think she's off to a good start, especially the part with Kirkuchi. Like
mm,
that she's very respectful when speaking to him, and like that the whole there's there it is clearly a thing that has carried over into the expanded universe in relation to Tegan's relationship with Indigenous Australians.
mm,
So it was kind of nice to see like the seeds of it here. Um, but like then it's just she kind of devolves into very damsel in distressy, and
mm,
I think it's it's a combination of the writing and also the shooting schedule, because for me a lot of her dialogue is it's not spoken, it's either shouted or it's moaned.
mm,
And then with the shooting schedule, for me it's kind of jarring that she's able to, well, maybe in the moment or with like an adrenaline surge, she's able to grasp the fact that mathematics can create the physical construct she's seen since time on Logopolis and Castrovalva. But she's completely skeptical of the concept of cybernetics here in robotics. Like she can't, like, did she say that it was monstrous or disgusting or something like that? And
yeah. And
it's like,
in fairness, I don't disagree with her on that.
but no, like, no, sorry, no, it's not that. It's the fact that robotics and cybernetics, or the way that I took it up was that she can't believe that robotics and cybernetics have advanced to such a state that's possible, as opposed to the morality of it. So it just like that was the way that I took it up. I might have actually taken it up wrong now that you're
I
saying it.
No, I think she was focused on the morality side, but I think there
Yeah,
was
yeah.
disbelief on, oh my God, it actually gets to this point, which
Mm,
isn't, completely misunderstandable for someone from 1981 either. But no, I think her disgusting comment was the idea that you would take someone's memories and put them into a robot body. I think that was
yeah.
her
Oh
that
yeah,
was her
yeah.
issue.
Okay, the morality aspect. Yeah. So like, if that's the case, then I took that up wrong. Um, but no, it's just like she does kind of for most of the story. And again, look, and she had a very good kind of monologue at the start where she's like she has reached her breaking point. You know, it's
Mm,
like everything that happened to Aunt Vanessa, everything that she's been through since Logopolis and Castrovalva. Like, so obviously, yeah, she's upset. It's understandable, but it just kind of does seem to devolve a small bit damsel in distressy. And I agree, like that the part where like the doctor basically tells her like, stop thinking about yourself. It's like I know there's a better way for you to handle that. Absolutely, there's a better way for you to kind of make her realize the bigger picture without basically calling her a crybaby. You know?
yeah. Um, I agree with you on a lot of that. Um,
Yeah.
I wasn't the biggest fan of her at the very start of the story. I mean, she mentioned losing her job like 4 times in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's very
It's a,
annoying. I know that again, that's the thing about Tegan, is like Tegan is known as like, I want to go back to Heathrow, get me back to Heathrow.
yeah.
Fuck off, Tegan. Like,
Yeah, and I do kind of agree. Like you would adjective, it's a fucking time machine.
yeah, but also like, I mean, her stress is completely warranted, her burnout is completely warranted, that's completely fine. But again, it's this thing of like, write something else for her to fucking say.
Mm,
Like, there has to be something else. Like, you can't just have her repeating the same line over and over and over again. And I'm going to disagree with you, but I think Janet's acting in this one was very poor. Um, her line deliveries were, I mean, yes, she's repeating the same line over and over again, which isn't helpful, but the way she delivers them, I think, again, compared to last week, is a bit of a slip. Bear in mind, I will reiterate something I said last week. Janet is not a massively experienced actress at this point in time.
yeah,
So again, we'll give her a little bit of leeway, but again, if compared to Castrovalva, even her performance is a massive step backward. I keep thinking to like that scene where she's in the TARDIS on her own, she's trying to figure out how it works, and she's just breaking down. And at one point she starts crying, and it's the weirdest on-screen crying I've ever seen in my life. It's like a cross between crying and like laughing and dry heaving. I don't know what the fuck she was doing. Um, but like that sort of takes you out of it. And even
Yeah.
like with that scene, like we've got her trying to pilot the TARDIS by herself because she wants to go warn people and whatever. But like compared to last week where she like was like cool, air hostess jacket off, sleeves rolled up, okay, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be I'm gonna figure it out. Fucking on task, on target, fucking focus, whatever. Like I was saying last week, I thought she was brilliant last week. I thought she was fucking fantastic. This week I'm like, woman, will you shut the fuck up?
Mm.
You are wrecking my head. I do agree with you. The bit of her with Kuji, I think, was brilliant. I think that's also part of where her issue, morally speaking, with the um robotics came from.
Mm.
The idea that like Kikuchi isn't actually Kikuchi, he's like a robotic version of him. Um, because they sort of say that Kikuchi's like the oldest of them. So like he was one of the first that was taken or whatever. So um, I do like that component of it, but for the rest of it, I was like, bitch, will you shut the fuck up? Oh, actually, one, two additional things. One, she's a very good artist. Credit
Mm.
where it's due. Her drawing was fabulous. And number two, going back to what you're saying about how the doctor was treating her a bit like shit, in the sense of being like, basically saying like, stop being so selfish or whatever. Like, she says like we need to go back to Earth and warn them, and he's just popping off being like, as if they believe us. I was
Mm.
like, she's not wrong. She's not wrong
No.
to want the things that she wants, and she's not being selfish in wanting them either. Do you know? It sort of reminds me of, do you know when you have someone who actually, I'm going to give you an example. I'll give you a personal example. I put forward a proposal a couple of months ago for me and my team to go to South Africa to visit a team member that we have there. And from the minute I started talking to people about like, oh, I'm putting together this proposal to go to Cape Town, blah blah blah, everyone and their mother, everyone and my mother, well, actually, no, everyone and my dad, right? My dad was a big one, she's honest,
Mm.
was saying how I was just doing it for a free trip, for a free holiday, and whatever, because I had joked that I hadn't traveled for work in a while and that I missed South Africa and I would love to go back to South Africa. I've been there before, it's absolutely lovely. I'm like, okay, those two things can both be true. I can miss South Africa and want to go back there again, and I can have a perfectly justifiable business reason why I believe we should go. And it shouldn't be construed the only reason I'm writing the business case is because I want a free trip to South Africa. Like literally, even my manager was like, "Oh, I know Trish tried to get us South Africa. Oh, hard luck, Trish. Maybe next time." And I'm like, dude, I wasn't doing it for the free trip. I was doing it because I felt there was a justifiable business reason for us to go there. If we were to go anywhere, yeah, if we were to go, I mean, in person, there's justifiable business reasons for us to go to any site that is multilingual, but specifically Cape Town because we have a team member there and it's a multilingual site and it's a 24-hour site and all these extra reasons. And I was just like, whatever. But that's the sort of the sense I got from that scene where it's like, Tegan wants to go home. Yes, she's made that fucking very clear. And her reasons for home wanting to go home are selfish. She wants to go home. She wants to go back to her job. She wants to return to her life. That doesn't mean when faced with a crisis and when she's saying we need to get back to Earth to warn them that she's still being selfish. Like,
Mm.
no, her reasoning for wanting to go back to Earth has now changed, or at least it now has an extra element to it. Don't be a fucking dickhead. Just like allow her her moment.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I said I basically summing it up. I'm not a big fan of Tegan in this one. She had her nice moment with Kikuchi, but that was really about it. And it was only one scene. I would have liked to have seen more from them. I would have liked to have
Mm.
seen like we hear from Bygone that Bygone is really the only one of um the four leaders who, you know, sort of leverages his free will and, that type of thing. I would have liked to have seen her trying to convince Kakuta to help them, um,
Mm,
you know, and have more scenes of them together because I think that was wasted. To be honest,
mm,
it seemed like a cheap fucking um, uh, it just seemed cheap. There's no other way to describe it. I just felt it just felt cheap.
mm.
Um, whereas it had the potential to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. So now that leaves Nissa,
Mm,
and I thought this was a great showing from Nissa. Really, really did.
I agree.
Uh, she's a big tech buff in here. Because she, as you said, pointed out, she knows pretty much what every piece of machinery does. I love how the Doctor kind of relies on her a lot, the second in command type thing. Possibly some of the root cause of Adric's jealousy, but at the same time, dude, you're a mathematician. That's where your strengths lie. She's she's the tech buff, and you know your role.
Mm,
Um, but what I like about her here is her stance against Monarch, where she's like, pretty much it's, yeah, you can throw all like the sunshine and rainbows on it, but at the end of the day, we know that I know and you know that you're just swapping one regime out for another. So
mm.
don't, you can't fucking bullshit me on this one. Um, Also, given the fact that she, like, even if you take into account, like, the fact that Adric has been on the TARDIS longer, so if you want to go by seniority, she's not afraid to call him out on his bullshit or his naivety when he acts like an idiot, which again I
Mm.
also liked. Um, but I'm trying to think about my favorite part with her here, and it's where it's like she very casually asks the Doctor for his sonic screwdriver and his pen, and then like, it's like, all right, well, what's going on here? And then at the end, the start of episode 4, it's like, oh no, she had a theory, and the theory was that she can disrupt the circuit from the control disk. I was like, that's just fucking brilliant. Well done. um, so yeah, she was. Nissa was probably the highlight of the story, I think, for me anyway.
I agree. I when we started the story, I was watching it and I was like, okay, Tegan, shut the fuck up. Adric, stop being a prick. Um, and then we had Nissa just stood there reading the maths book, being like, fuck you, Adric. I am reading the book you're talking about, asshole. And then, like,
Mm,
literally from like that very first moment where she's pointing at everything, she's explaining what everything is, I'm like, cool. And I was waiting for it. I was like, cool. Episode 1 is going well. Episode 1 is going well. Come on, let's keep this going now through the other 3 episodes. But I'm so glad that they did, and that like Monarch was seeing her as a threat. Like her
mm,
intelligence was being recognized. Like I said, I loved her thing with the pencil and the sonic screwdriver. I thought that was very good. I love the way like she's like, I don't know what you're smoking, but like this guy is evil. He's a tyrant. Like I don't know how you can't see it,
mm,
but I can. And I love how she stuck by her guns and she didn't let Adric bully
yeah.
her into
Mm,
saying something. And also like she didn't like when they were like, oh, take her away. It's not like she tried to change her mind to sort of save her own ass or anything. She's like,
mm,
no, I don't agree with what you're doing and it's ridiculous and I'm not going to stand for it. Um, I think I love the fact that like even though this is like the big contrast with Tegan and so on, even though she was the one in most peril in this story, do you know? Because she was targeted as a potential ally and then definitely a potential hindrance to Monarch. You know,
mm,
she was going to be changed into a robot and all that kind of stuff. She was the one in mortal danger more so than everyone else. She kept her she kept her cool. She was focused on the task, very methodical, very scientific, whatever thing. I thought that was great. I thought she did really, really well. I liked seeing the way she was with the doctor, how they were bouncing back and forth with each other. Like I said, I liked the way that she didn't kowtow to Adric. she didn't let Adric ramshot over her. The only
Mm,
thing I would have liked to have seen, and this may be a bit much, maybe asking a bit too much in a story where Nissa was very, very good, is I would have liked to have seen her maybe standing up for Tegan, do you know, and kind of
mm,
telling Adric or the Doctor to stop being dicks to her.
yeah.
But then again, she was carrying a lot of the story on her back, and to add that one extra piece may have taken away from everything else. So I
Mm,
thoroughly enjoyed Nissa in this. Probably my favorite Nissa performance to date, I would think.
yeah.
Um, because it kept her relevant from beginning to end.
Mm,
And I'm really
no.
curious how next week is going to go with her passing out and stuff. I'm really interested in seeing how that resolves itself. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Nissa did great in this one.
yeah. No. Sorry, like, for some reason, the way you were saying about her standing up for Tegan, and
Mm.
it's like it's not the same thing. But the fucking robot chicken sketch came into my head, and it was just like going, "Oh, sorry, I was too busy thinking about all the 80 billion people that lived in Alderaan and all my family." And I was like, it's not the same context, but that just popped into my head. That'll be Nissa forevermore.
Oh, you
Um,
need to go back and get your plane. So sorry. It's not like my
yeah,
entire planet has been destroyed or anything, and my father was killed and his body was taken over by them. But no, no, let's worry about you making your fucking plane. We're in a time
yeah,
machine. For fuck's sake. And oh, Adric, idiot. You might be good at maths,
yeah.
but you're not good at anything else.
But I would just like love like the bit where she talked about how her father was killed by the Master, and
Mm.
Adric was like, you can't compare the Monarch to the Master," and it just cuts, and I was like, "Oh, you just know that Tegan was like, or sorry, this was like, motherfucker, I can compare the two of them."
She, more than
Oh,
anyone else, has the right to
yeah,
compare anyone to the Master if she wants.
yeah, yeah. It just, oh god, yeah. No, yeah.
I
So
imagine like her
yeah, I
running thought. I imagine her running like her inner commentary for most of the story. She's like, "Bitch, please."
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, like I think that this is probably easily going to stay on the podium for the rambling in terms of best performances.
But it's definitely. Obviously, we haven't had that many episodes, but I would say like it is definitely on the list. I can see it staying
Yeah.
on the list. I obviously don't know what her future stories are like, but I can see this staying on the
Mm,
list.
yeah. Uh, cool. So now move on to prominent characters, of which of four potentials, there's only one.
Mm,
Which I'm kind of uh, a bit miffed by, because I would have loved to have seen, like, it kind of gave me a small bit of War Games vibes, with the different
mm,
eras being picked, and I would have loved to have seen like more from Kirkuchi, and even Princess Villagra is just, she just nods and smiles politely. She does a Homer Simpson on it, but like I would love to have seen more from everyone else. But we have Bygone at the very least anyway,
mm.
and I liked him. I've kind of alluded to it throughout the story here, but I really liked it because for me, I think the interesting part of Bygone's character is that he knows he can be effectively like overwritten at any moment for showing any sign of defiance, but he's still willing to help the Doctor and the others try and stop Monarch. And like, I really enjoyed Philip's performance because you can see the whole, he is haunted by his existence, where he know that he's nothing but like circuits and soldering and elements. Like his like spirit or soul or whatever you want to call it is just in a small little 2 inch by 3 inch little card, and you can see the kind of the pain of his existence in his face. I really enjoyed Philip's work with that, and I thought he did a great job in like portraying the loss of his old way of life, but then also being eager to start the potential new world with the on a new planet with the other different cultures. So like his time with the Doctor was great. Yeah, like I just really enjoyed him here. Really, really enjoyed him.
Yeah, I'd agree. I found him to be an interesting character, and I found that like as a representation of all of the um Earthlings in the story, I found him to be really interesting
Mm,
because you know persuasion and enlightenment are kind of saying like, oh, he's overstepping, he's doing too much. I think that Monarch defends him in a way, and it's like we need to have one person who is um not necessarily a dissenter, but who has the potential to dissent.
mm,
It's important for control, which I find to be an interesting concept. But I love
yeah.
that it's the, I mean, I don't know, like, is he meant to be like ancient Greek
Hmm.
or whatever?
Yeah.
He's a philosophizer. Do you know what I mean? Like he's meant to be, you know, wise beyond his years anyway. It's the sort of sense that I get from what they're trying to do with him. Um, and I really like the way they did it. I would have liked a bit more, and this is something that also applied specifically to Linfutu, but um, I get that they're cognizant of the fact they've been on the ship for 2,500 years. I get that. Um, but I would have liked to have seen more of Bygone expressing his original self, if that makes sense.
Mm, yeah.
Like himself and Linfutu are basically like how they appear, the fact that like he is an ancient Greek or Roman or whatever he's meant to be. Um,
Yeah. He's from Athens, so yeah, he's
yeah,
Greek.
he's Athenian. Yes, the fact that he's meant to be an Athenian, the fact that Linfutu is meant to be, from this particular dynasty or whatever, it doesn't actually play into anything because they just explain all these highly technological terms. Linfutu runs the robot lab, and it's like, okay, like it makes Bygone interesting, but I want to know more about Bygone himself.
Hmm.
Do you know? Like I would have liked an anecdote or a memory or like him sharing something of the man he was before. Um, so that we understand him more than just the, you know, computer in this Athenian man's clothes, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
I No, no, it does. I think we get a small bit of it, just a small sliver of it when Monarch is like dressing him down, and he's like, I'm a lot, as you said, like he points out like, dude, I'm a philosopher. If you didn't want my opinion, you shouldn't have fucking picked me up. Like, you shouldn't have chosen me as your representative because it's
Yeah,
innately
but
within me to fucking quit. But yeah, like, it's only
yeah,
a sliver. It's only a
it's
small
only a sliver.
sliver.
I would have liked to have seen more of it, you know,
Yeah.
um,
Oh no, absolutely.
or seen him present a
Um,
solution that doesn't rely on technology
hmm.
or something like that, you know.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, no, it does. No, I get what where you're going with it. Also, it raises the question like that, like so. I think by the way that they did the timing, Bygone and Linfutu are the two most recent cultural representatives on the ship, and they're fully aware of their surroundings. But when they first meet Kirkuchi is actually, well, according to like Tegan's translation, he's still speaking as if he's not in the know as to what's going on,
Mm,
and I don't know whether that was for his benefit, that the new arrivals don't know everything that's going on, so I'm going to speak to them like they're uneducated and use terms like the great wandering and walkabout and things like that. um so yeah, I think there definitely is some untapped potential here, but again, it's like I don't think you can stretch the story to six. So how do you fit it into a four-parter?
yeah, and like you make the point of like you know, Bygone doesn't speak Greek; he speaks
Yeah.
English.
Yep.
Um, I think Kikuchi's saying that like he went walkabout and he's on. I think that makes sense. In the context of like Bygone describes it that the others fully bought into Monarch, And so, this is Kikuchi trying to play the game as presented to him by Monarch. Because if Kikuchi's the oldest, then maybe this is just how Monarch has made him behave to newbies coming in. That he's
Mm.
meant to present himself as the um how about the natural guy and stuff like that. Like doing like
Mm.
um but it is weird that the two newest people seem to have the most technological control. I don't know. It's weird.
Mm.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But look, let's talk
Like,
about. Sorry, go on.
no, I was like, like there's like, because the whole thing kind of raises some other questions that don't quite, in my head, don't quite jive with the overall plan. So I think we
Mm.
might actually get into it when we discuss Monarch, especially Monarch, I suppose.
Yeah, so let's go on to our villains. So we've got Persuasion, Enlightenment, and Monarch. I don't know about you. I don't have much to say about Persuasion and Enlightenment as separate beings, but I don't know about you, and you're going first. So,
No, like it's like I can kind of Persuasion. He's just essentially the muscle of the group, kind of like his name, Persuasion. And he doesn't seem, the only kind of difference between himself and Enlightenment is that he doesn't really seem to have Monarch's ear the same way as
hmm,
Enlightenment does. And then for Enlightenment herself, she just makes me uneasy for the whole fucking thing. It's like it's like a cat stalking you. I just like I'm on edge every time she appears on fucking thing. And it's like I feel like that she's meant to be the siren song that lures people in, and like she kind of reminds me of Ebony Maw from like
hmm,
Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. She just kind of comes across like that character, like the
yeah.
Oracle of Monarch. But outside of that, yeah, like, there's no real fleshed out character between either of them, between Enlightenment and Persuasion.
I agree with you. I think Persuasion is the muscle, that he is the heavy, um, but in a way that is so like it's so human. It's so
Mm.
stereotypical. The way he carries himself, the way he sneers constantly, and it's like
Yeah.
I get that you've been observing humanity for a long time, but like I would have appreciated if the direction had included a bit more alienness to it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
as for Enlightenment, she seems to. I agree with you. She seems like the Monarch's ear more. In both a good way and a bad way, in the sense that like she can say things to him that maybe he wouldn't accept from other people. Um, but I don't think the two of them actually have distinct characters as such. Um,
No.
and I think you could easily have removed one of them, and the story would have worked pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah. Because like the way they're built up, it's like almost like a if you take a look at like the kind of stereotypical like you've seen V for Vendetta, like the totalitarian government that's
Mm,
there. It's like Mr. Creevy, who's like he's the head of like the Ministry of Re-education for fucking offenders, and like you've got the Minister of Media and all this type of stuff. It's like it's like they're meant to fill these roles, but they have so little character you actually don't get an idea as to what they're like in those roles.
yeah, and actually,
Yeah.
that's the one thing about Enlightenment is that you do get the sense that like like, it's not the sense we see it on screen. She is the hypnotic component
Yeah.
of everything. So I think the reason why Monarch probably trusts her more is because she is more of the softly, softly approach,
Yeah.
which is the approach he wants to adopt.
Hmm.
Persuasion is there when enlightenment fails,
Yeah.
do you know? Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, other than that, I think they're just there for
Yeah.
the most
No,
part.
no, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. So then we have Monarch.
Mm,
And no, what I will say is Stratford's performance throughout is great. I think
mm,
despite his he felt his limitations with the latex prosthetics and his inability to go to the jacks. I don't although like he's sitting down for most of his performance, so why didn't they just put him into like a portable toilet? I don't know, but like he worked well with the material that he was given.
Hmm.
I'm not going to fault. I don't think I can fault the performance. In terms of the Monarch, though, he had my interest for a brief time when the plan was, I think I'm God. I'm going to go back in time and meet myself to confirm my suspicions. And that's mentioned twice. And for the rest of it, he's just a typical alien invader. And he becomes boring then to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I love his pompous nature. Like it's great. And I liked how he's a good enough con man that he's able to switch moods when addressing different members of the TARDIS crew, because it did make for some very interesting dynamics.
Hmm.
Like I don't think he exhibits the same personality with any of them. Like with
Hmm.
Adric, he's magnanimous. With Nissa, it's like you're a fucking thorn on my side. I'm going to make a copy of you that I can control. With the Doctor, it's like, I feel like I could use you, but you're a bit too crazy. So how about I get to know you a bit more? And Tegan is nothing
Hmm.
essentially. He like or no, sorry, she's the she's the cattle that he's trying to lure into the slaughterhouse. That
Yeah.
because that's all. Oh, that's all humanity is. So I liked his ability to do that. But in terms of his portrayal of his overall plan, two mentions of the interesting factor, and then it's just typical alien invader.
Yeah. I think like the interesting thing about Monarch, like the interesting part of his plan of he wants to be able to travel through time is particularly to go back to before the Big Bang to verify that he himself is God. I maybe again, you were maybe saying that maybe you misread one of the things, or maybe I was misreading this, but I thought that he wanted to go back to make himself God. You know,
Um,
because they say that he wants to go back to meet himself, but I don't know, the way I interpreted it was that like if he can travel through time, that makes him as a god. So
okay,
he will
so
go back in time to be that god. But
I have the transcript up here in front of me because I had to go back and check the Lin Fuchu thing.
mm,
So it's the doctor says so he believes that to fast travel faster than light would mean going backwards in time, back to the Big Bang. And Bygone says, and beyond. Monarch believes that he will meet himself there. He believes he is God.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. I even with that reading of it, even with that phrasing, I still read it as he believes he is God, and I don't think he means literally meet himself. I think doing that he meets himself, that
Oh,
he will become the man
that
he's meant to be.
that he'll fulfill his
Yeah.
yeah. But then I think earlier on, like Bygone says, like your quest to find the ultimate won't succeed because there is no ultimate. I know that's a bit like more highfalutin language to
Mm,
cover the fact of like what he is actually looking for, but it kind of reminds me of Scaroth a small bit. With the
mm.
whole concept of being splintered across time. But here it's like, no, that does sound kind of cool, but like, it's just it. It's the focus is put off it so quickly that you almost forget that that's what his goal is.
Yeah, and like I don't actually get his main plan. His main plan doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Um, but I would agree with you. I think the performance was very good. It did have
Hmm.
several hints or several um components that I think could have been later been used in 1984's Doom, because I do get a sense of Baron Harkonnen from him from time to time.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
And actually, I was trying to remember what the Baron's name was from Doom, so I was looking up like Doom 19 and a couple like 1984, and I was like, I had in my head like, did Doom come out before this? No, it didn't. Doom
Is
came out
it?
after.
Isn't it Vladimir of House Harkonnen?
Well, it's Baron. He's the Baron. He's Baron Harkonnen. I didn't look up his full name.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
check there now.
it has been a long time since I've seen Dune.
Yeah, I have it, and I have the book of it, and I started reading it last year, but I fell out of it. Not because it wasn't interesting; it's just because I think I got distracted by. I think I got distracted by Space Hammer for a Co Volume 2. So, yeah, no, it's Baron Vladimir Harkonnen.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
Complete tangent, completely unrelated, but only because I've mentioned Dune. Um, Patrick Stewart was in Dune.
Yep.
I've just finished Patrick Stewart's biography. Patrick Stewart's
Yeah.
experience on Dune was shit.
I've heard that it was like it's. See, I've never seen the movie. I've seen clips of it, but I've heard like that it's kind of like. Is it like treated as a box office flop?
A bit, but I don't mean that his experience on it was shit in the sense that
Yeah.
the filming was shit. The
Yeah.
director made him feel so unwelcome and clearly did not want him.
Oh.
Because this is a complete tangent, but I was telling a friend about this the other day. Again, additional tangent. Patrick Stewart's autobiography, fucking brilliant. Highly recommend to everyone. And if you can get the audio version where Patrick actually reads it, fantastic. But um, he was called in to replace the person who had already been cast in that role. And the reason why they called him in is because the director and I think it was the casting director or like one of the producers had seen him on stage at the RSA. But when he turned up, he met with the director who just stared at him blankly and for the entire filming did not talk to him directly, never smiled at him, never interacted well with him. And he found out later that the reason why was because when they saw him in the RSC, I don't know if he was like in King Lear or something, but like he was long grey hair, pale skin, looking really gaunt and
Mm,
disheveled and whatever. And that's who they thought they were getting. Except Patrick had been filming a movie in Europe. So what they got was a healthy, well tanned, bald guy and not a really gaunt, long silver haired gentleman.
right.
And it's like you could have made him the gaunt guy using makeup and a wig.
But like, it's kind of strange, like because his character in the newer version is portrayed by Josh Brolin,
Mm.
big fucking muscle, granite faced Josh Brolin, you know.
Yeah,
So like,
I don't know. It's so weird.
yeah,
It sounded like it was so horrendous. Like it was the absolute worst filming experience ever. Um, Again, highly recommend you just. But coming back to this story to Monarch,
yeah,
I think his plan is shit. I think the way the way the whole system is set up, I think doesn't make any sense. And I think he's lazy as hell. He just sits on his ass and watches the video feeds as opposed to just containing the doctor and just fucking chopping his head off. Like, fuck off. Like, these people are way more damaging to you than they're worth. Just move on. But no, instead he sits on his throne and, you know, watches on monitors. I'm like, oh my god, they're doing this. And it's not until the end when his two fucking lackeys are dead that he finally gets off his ass and goes to fucking do something about it. And then ends up being miniaturized and left under a helmet for some reason.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I agree with you that the concept of what he was apparently trying to do is interesting, but nothing he was doing seemed to actually be feeding into that concept. Like the science behind
yeah,
the story is super fucking weird. Um,
yeah. There's a whole lot in this like of the plan that just it really doesn't make sense.
yeah, and even the fact that like so he thinks he's God, but like he doesn't believe Rassilon exists. He isn't aware of
Mm,
what the fifth dimension is or like how like alternative ways that you can travel in time and whatever. I'm like, I get there's delusions of grandeur, but there's delusions of grandeur, and then there's just being a fucking moron. And
mm,
he comes across as a very intelligent fucking moron.
yeah, that's the thing. He's just like it was like it's not like idiot savant. It's just oh, I don't know how you describe it, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay, so we have done our usual. We have done story recap. Thank you very much. Trivia. Thank me very much.
Thank you very much.
Character discussion. Thank us very much.
Thank us.
We are now on to our final component, which is our overall thoughts. So in this section, we give our thoughts on the story as a whole, and also give the story a score out of 5. So, as usual, Paddington, you did socials, so you, sir, get to go first.
Thank you kindly. Um, so, as I said, I thought that this was a good outing for Peter. Um, I did feel like that he had a natural kind of flair to it. Because just certain scenes they just really appealed to me, and I just like it did come across like reminded me of Tom in like as bad as it was Revenge of the Cybermen, where he just seemed to be coasting through it. Or even sorry, the Ark in Space, where he's just like kind of coasting through, and it's like, yeah, feels like this guy's been doing this for years. So yeah, there was parts of it where for with Peter, I was like going, he feels like a natural. That being said, I think him, Nissa, and Bygone are probably the best parts of this story because Monarch is very meh as a villain. Like we said, like his initial concept for what he's trying to do is amazing, but it's just almost completely forgotten about as soon as it's mentioned. Um, Adric and Tegan, yeah, as like Adric is just he really fucking annoys me in this story, and Tegan she becomes very damsel in distressy, and that kind of starts to grate on you after a while. And even though we said like the Doctor could have handled both of them better, there's still an awful lot about them that bugs me outside the Doctor's interactions with them. Um, I like the idea of taking the cultural representative from different parts of Earth, but I find it kind of hard to believe that like as advanced as the Urbanka were, they would just go to a different continent each time, not scan the rest of the planet to see what advances had been made. Because he said they were first went 35,000 years ago, where according to most records, like there's very little advancement from certain societies. So when he picks up Kikuchi's people, and then next he goes to where like they presumably have nothing, and then he goes to pick up the Mayans where they have built fucking stone temples and all these other things without what it took a lot of European civilizations to build with the aid of the animals they had available. I then going to Mandarin China and then Greece. Like, surely there was like, why keep them all as these separate, different groups? Would you not have tried to homogenize them a small bit so that when you do get back to Earth at a much more advanced time frame, when they do land, they're not all going to look out of fucking place?
Mm,
That didn't make any sense to me. Especially now that you had Tegan's update, like here's the fashion trends. It's like, cool. Why not start mass producing these for the new robots as opposed to just keeping them all in their um, normal attire? Because presumably you're also going to use them to help you shuttle all the stuff off. Like, so it just didn't really make any sense to me.
mm.
So overall, I've given this a 2 out of 5.
Okay.
Yeah. I did like the Chinese dragon dancing, the Mayan dancing, and also the Aboriginal dancing.
Mm.
Yeah,
So for me, I disagree with you on Peter's acting in this one, but
yeah,
we can just
hmm
agree to disagree on that. Um,
yeah,
I find the story really tough to get through. And I mean, there's a slightly personal reason for that, which I'm not going to go into, Paddy obviously you're aware of it. Um,
yeah,
but also like I found that like I kept having to take breaks. I'd watch maybe I watched episode 1 all the way through. That wasn't too bad. Like episode 2 onwards, I'd get through maybe like half the episode and I'd have to take a break and either read a fanfic or watch a YouTube video or do something else and then come back to it. And like this went on for days. Do you know what I mean? Which is very
mm,
unlike me. Usually I just watch it in one sitting and I'd watch it all the way through. Um, I don't know what it was. I think part of it was the acting across the board wasn't great. The writing was just confusing. It's the whole Monarch's whole plan, what happened to their people, and how they do the miniaturization. Like, the whole thing just confused me, and I was just like, this
Mm.
makes no fucking sense. And then you'd Adric being an asshole and Tegan being fucking irritating as shit. And I'm just like, Nissa carried this entire story on her back. Like, really, like, massive kudos to Sarah Sutton because
Yeah.
Sarah's acting was brilliant. Her line deliveries are on point across the board. I didn't think there was a dud delivery in the pack. Her her character was given great stuff to do, and you've the other fuckers just there. And then you've got like even like the fucking like helmets that don't have a visor and aren't airlock and just have a little puffer thing that doesn't go in your mouth. It just shoots air at your mouth in the hope that it doesn't evaporate or like disperse into the air before you have a chance to inhale it.
Mm.
And apparently you can wear it into space without an enclosed spacesuit, which that whole
Oh,
spacewalk scene was so shit. I'm sorry, it
oh,
was
yeah.
so
Actually, yeah.
ridiculous.
Sorry, like that thing that really kind of fucking bugged me. It's like, how can he throw the cricket ball with enough force that it would fucking rebound and come back and push him back? That fucking made no sense to me.
Yeah, so to be honest, I was going to give this a 2.5, but the more we've talked about it, the more I realized that actually I really didn't like the story, like at all. I was actually talking to my mom at breakfast this morning. She was asking, like, "Oh, are you ready for the podcast?" And I was like, "Nearly." I still had notes to finish, and I was just like, because I was like, I just don't like it. I was like, there's the perils of doing a podcast. Like, we have to watch the story. That's the fucking point. And
Mm.
I was like, can this one just be over? Um, so yeah, I think, I mean, I don't want to give it less than a two because I think the concepts were interesting, but there was just too many. Why the fuck did you do that? Why did you do that? Like,
Mm.
even the whole fact that like this ship has been bouncing back and forth between Earth and the home planet 5 fucking times. Like, bitch, just fucking hang out by the moon and wait for time to pass. Why the fuck are you flying back and forth the whole time, you fucking moron? Just hang out by the moon. Time will pass.
Mm.
It'll be fine. But yeah, so I'm also going to give it a two. I cannot bear to give it anything higher than that. And in fairness, I don't think it deserves anything lower. But
I
yeah,
was
no.
like, the way you were talking, I was like, am I going to have to ask you which do you hate more, the gunfighters or this?
Oh no, the Gunfighters is still on its own level. This was just the chronic, and maybe it's because it's been a couple of weeks, so we had to take a couple of weeks off for different reasons.
Yeah.
And maybe it's that, but like Castrovalva wasn't perfect, but like we went from Castrovalva to this. I mean,
Mm.
come on, like all the characterization's gone, the performances have gotten shit, in my opinion, and I'm just like, no, whatever. Can we just get back on track like we did with Castrovalva, please? Um, so yeah, not the best second outing in the world. Um,
No.
and to be honest, I'm glad this was the second story and not the first story, because if this was Peter's first story, like I said, you and I disagree a little bit on the acting here, but
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been as invested in the Fifth Doctor or Tegan if this had been, for example, if this had been the regeneration story. I would not have bought into those characters at all if this was the first I'd seen of them. So, um, yeah, well done, Sarah Sutton, um, for giving this story any semblance of a score whatsoever.
I was just taking a look there, and with the exception of Meglos, because of how much of a Jacqueline Hill fangirl you are,
Mm.
uh, if you take Meglos out of the equation, you haven't scored higher than me since the Horns of Naiman. We've either been on par or I've scored higher than you. You scored higher than me on Meglos, but I'm putting that down to the fucking fact that Jacqueline was in it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and the difference was like 0.25,
yeah,
which I can fully equate to Jacqueline 110%.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see. It was just kind of, I was kind of going at it, going, when was the last time you scored something higher than me?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, but it's been a while.
Yeah,
So
so
we'll just have we have to see if that trend continues.
mm,
And also, just for our dedicated and loyal listeners, thank you so much as always. We'll try and keep our schedule going back regular again as best as we can, but obviously, just with different things going on with work and civic commitments, we'll just try to be a bit more present as well as to what's going on in terms of the schedule. But thank you again for always listening, and we hope to have you to continue listening to us, especially now when I think we're off to not bad, but definitely we're off to kind of an okayish start with Peter.
we've started. We'll
Yeah,
we'll go from there.
yes. So we shall go from there, and the next place we will go to is Kinda. Not kinda, Kinda.
Bye.
Bye.